Hello, trade professionals. Welcome back to another news roundup with the Simply Trade podcast. I'm Anik, and I'm here with my fellow hosts of the regular show, which is Andy and Lalo. Good morning, everyone. We are going to discuss some really good articles on whatever is happening in the trade industry right now. And there's lots happening. Understand, we can't cover all of it, but I choose what I kind of gets into my eye or what I think is relevant. And I hope that this can help in your further discussions in your daily work or, whatever you need to know to do your job the right way. Yeah, but let's begin with our first article, which logistics players navigate surging imports and supply chain resilience. So ultimately, U.S. imports are projected to reach heights not seen in the past 2 years, kind of placing stress on supply chains, not wondering if, they're able to handle this, especially with all the backups that we've been getting, with the So what was the canal? Suez Canal? Is it that one? Yes. And then with, the Baltimore Bridge. So there's different things happening that kind of create backups in the United States. But with the surge of imports, there is a certain concern that there will be potential congestions in the rail system and at ports, due to the surge in containerized goods. And so I kind of want to talk on this, like, why is this surge happening? And how can we make sure that we have the smoothest transition from, going to the regular, just regular trade to like an increase in goods? How do we prepare for this? How do we stay sane? And what can people do to prepare for this? And why is this happening? So let's address all these kind of questions. I know it's a lot, but maybe we can knock them out like in one.
The logic seems to be leaning towards the fact that the economy is doing a little better now, not just locally, not just nationally, but internationally, which obviously means more spending, more buying, more consumers buying products. And because of that, there's more requests for products to be imported. And therefore that the other thing that I saw was, although Anik, you did talk about, we've had disruptions in logistics and trade. In spite of that, there has been more efforts, according to the article, to implement supply chain resilience.
Well, and for those that are doing supply chain planning and inventory planning, things of that nature with your transportation, all that, the next 8 to 12 weeks are going to be somewhat intense because you've got companies that are buying for the school year that's coming around the corner in a few months. Obviously, we're just heading into the summer, and a lot of kids just got out of school, and now we're already talking about going back to school. So you've got the school season that's coming out. The buying is being done now. In addition to that, then you also have it's an election year, so there's going to be some thoughts on what's going on there. And thirdly, you've also got buying early or planning for early things for the Christmas season. That said, the other thing that's coming into play is in the election series, it has effect on this, is that just recently, the polls seem to think, and the economists, there's several economists and whatever, whether you like it or not, it appears that what they're saying is that Trump has about a 60 to 63% chance of being elected. His initial policies has been a U.S. first or USA first type buying scenario, with that a protectionism type of policy, which then there could be higher duty rates on things and whatnot. So I think there's the incentive to consider buying early and getting some of your inventory in. Now, that said, there it always seems to come back in this particular article that the West Coast seems to be where the congestion is going to be, those Western ports. It always seems to be coming out of Asia, the ocean traffic and all that. However, looking at this, there's a scenario now of, and the stress test is that congestion of ports and the number of ships, the number of units, TEUs, if you will, that are being moved, the containers, the pallets, the cookie sheets, if you will. All said and done, that is one thing that people have been also diversifying their supply chain for multiple reasons. The geopolitical issue is one. The other side of that, though, is just the geography of certain things going on and moving away from China in some aspects. So I look at this going, I'm not so sure that the volumes will overwhelm the ports as, maybe I'm wrong in this, but I don't think we're going to see where, all right, the high increase in imports, yes, there may be higher volumes, but it's more diversified. So case in point, there's a lot more traffic coming out of Mexico. And then the trucking side of things. If rail is backed up, is utilizing, there is a surplus of truckers right now that can handle the volumes. But again, if the resiliency center's in there, the U.S. government, federal, needs to help streamline and deal with some of the state bureaucracy, especially in California, but other places, to get them out of the way so that cycle times can increase, meaning faster movement of your goods through the ports. So again, I don't know if I fully agree that the ports are going to be completely congested, but we'll have to watch that.
I have seen a lot of articles or whatever on some goods going down, and especially in grocery stores, which has been a problem for people. So it makes sense why goods being imported will go up. So obviously it makes sense. Because if things get cheaper, people will buy more, which is good, which is what we want, right? Because things have been a little tricky, and
but keep in mind, I mean, they've not gone back to lower
not
levels.
normal, but if something was good, like if it goes a little bit down, it's good.
It's good, but I mean, it's still 20% higher in some cases, 15% higher in other cases.
But that's not just the U.S., that's everywhere.
Yeah, I know it, but that's in the overall scheme of things. And so that's where I look at it where, the inflation's gotten better. No, it hadn't. It's come down a little bit. The markets, when government gets involved, it chokes the free market, and the free market is where true price adjustments come into play. So,
yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the government can't do everything just at once and right away. It's never going to happen. It literally never is. Otherwise, we would be living a way different life. It's impossible, right? But we'll just have to wait it out. And, everything takes time. Just like when you lose a war, you don't bounce back right away. You have to build yourself back up. And it takes years. So, we're not far away from whatever happened in COVID. So, I mean, we're patient, and we're all living a good life, hopefully. Not everyone, but, I hope everyone does at some point. Going on to our next article, which is the UE. Oh my God. Europe's Jesus Christ. And I live right here. Europe's decision on tariffs for Chinese electric vehicles. So we have talked on this, I think, from the American side, and America and China don't have the greatest relationship. I think we all know that by now, how much we've talked about it. But Europe also the European Union wants to put a little bit of their 5 cents in it. And they're planning on putting tariffs up to 38%, which is crazy, but I feel like justified. I don't know. You guys can definitely talk on this more. I'm not very educated in the Chinese electric vehicle part. But I kind of want to understand more if they're doing this, if the European Union is deciding to do that and US is deciding to do kind of the same play on that as well. What does that mean for China, and what they might do, and how will this affect like the economy, or maybe the car industry?
Let me just jump in. I mean, the whole reason why you would put tariffs, when a government adds additional tariffs on something, the objective of the use or the tool of using a tariff is to try and change the behavior of the source country. So in this case, what's happening is because of the Forced Labor Prevention Act in the U.S. and other countries having anti-slavery type and anti-forced labor legislation, Europe now is in getting involved. They're adding these additional tariffs as an incentive, to China to change their ways to stop using forced labor. And with that, the items that are being manufactured, the raw materials for the batteries and a lot of the components of electric vehicles, the batteries themselves, and some of the manufacturing of some automobiles. And with that, that's what's happening is that in the U.S., Biden had announced 100% duty rate on EVs out of China. Europe now is looking at the equivalent of almost 50%, 48% in total in the overall things. And what's happening is Europe is finally looking at playing hardball with China. China's, to their credit, they've tried and are continuing to try and dominate trade on a global basis. And so they want to do what they want to do, however they want to fix it, and they don't want anybody else telling them about it. And as they go out, they're trying to sell their goods and given full access to the other markets around the world. Europe is finally pushing back on this particular issue, and that's what it boils down to is a lot of things that come into play, but it's primarily focused, I believe, on the anti-slavery, anti-forced labor legislation.
Andy talked about forced labor, and to an extent, I think it's also fair to talk about the fact that in this case, the Chinese government subsidizes a lot of the manufacturing in China to give an unfair advantage and be able to price things a lot lower. Although that that does fall into anti-dumping type scenarios, but by raising the tariffs for these products, in this case vehicles, it is pretty much telling the Chinese government quit helping these guys manufacture or subsidizing the manufacturer, because it's not fair, So aside from forced labor, they're also helping financially, and so obviously it's becoming very hard for any standard business or manufacturer to compete with that. So that, what do they need to do? I mean, they need to stop doing that, and making it more a fair level playing field.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, we're moving back from China now, and we're going on to Russian sanctions. And we've talked on Russian sanctions a few times now, especially because we do have a 1-hour webinar coming up, which is a Russian sanctions update with George W. Thompson. And he is going into all of the changes that are happening and kind of updating you on, the different things that these sanctions involve and what you have to kind of look at, whatnot. And you can still sign up. It's happening June 20th. It's just $49 dollars. I wanted to say euros, but it's dollars. And yeah, so that you can find on our website, and maybe we can put a link down below so you can just click the link and sign up. But so this article talks on the US announcing new Russian sanctions at the G7 summit. So the G7, the members are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom, and the United States. And those are the people who will all be gathering in southern Italy. Wow, beautiful. And yeah, so supposedly they will announce new Russian updates or sanctions. What do you think this will involve? Any ideas? They did not really say anything like that in the article, but do you have any speculations?
Well, the target is to sanction now companies that are helping the Russian military. And whoever is helping the Russian military, be it financially or even, through weapons and whatnot, support, logistics, all that. That's the effort now, is to target those, and so that's what they're aiming for. But there's also efforts in, I guess it's more political than it is in trade and sanctions, but anything and everything that is being frozen as far as assets and all that for Russia, the plan is to use that to pay off a lot of the infrastructure costs and loans that Ukraine has had to take out, as a result of the war. So.
Well, and the other thing too is that in looking at trying to support the Ukraine and push back on Russia, as Lalo says, the sanctions are going to go towards companies that are supplying or supportive of Russia. Well, in that, guess what? China's probably one of their biggest supporters. So are they really going to take on some people here? I don't know. It's just, this is one of those where this administration seems to takes a long time to act. And when they do, I hate to say it, this is like spitting in the wind. Sounds good. It's a good way of looking at it, but let's back up a minute. This is dealing with financial sanctions, if you will, on certain companies. And we'll see what the list comes out to and see what they do. But remember, Russia and China and India and, several other countries are moving to not use the US dollar for international exchange for monetary purposes. They want to use other currencies. Well, they circumvent all of these sanctions that we just talked about. So, it sounds good. We'll just have to wait and see what they actually come back with and what they're going to do, who's going to be on the list. Because Russia, at this point, they're saying they're trying, the State Department is claiming they're wanting to drive up the cost of the war for Russia. Or are they doing that? Because the biggest thing right now is Russia's able to sell their oil and their natural gas. Gee, who's one of the largest customers of natural gas or the biggest supplier of natural gas for who? Germany. Germany is subsidizing Russia. So, okay, so is this sanction going to be against the German government? I mean, you see where I'm going with this. It's one of these things where, okay, well, you know what? The U.S. offered and could have been the largest supplier of natural gas to Europe and to Germany. And yet, when Biden took over, he's cut down those, and it's not approving the permits to sell the natural gas out of the U.S. And the U.S. has, a huge supply of natural gas. And, again, so it's when you look at things on this, this sounds really good. But then when you look at it holistically, okay, let me spit in the wind because it ain't going to do any good.
Well, we did have, and we did have troubles. I remember someone told me that I think it was 2 years ago, like Christmas, they were not putting up lights anymore because of our energy, because of the war. And they said it's because, like, we were only supposed to use certain energy at certain times and blah, 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 because that was kind of the scare, what was going to happen. And, you know, the relationship with Russia was not good. So it is kind of scary because, you know, Germany depends on Russia in that sense. And also the thing is, every country depends on different countries, right? You can never be just independent and understand that Russia has like a bad reputation, as in what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. But I feel like you still have to, in a business way, it's like, that's like a family, it sucks to talk about, but like if you have a family business, you might have feud with someone like on a personal level, but in a business level, you can't really let that affect you because you depend on their work and they depend on your work.
If you allow yourself to become dependent on that bad character, I get that.
Of course, but like you can't, like, yeah, exactly. But it's the same with the United States. They can't sustain themselves. Like they need other countries too, you know? Even though some people might believe that they just want the United States for themselves. And, you know, if that's what you believe in, it's wild.
It's impossible. We've come to depend on a lot of resources from all over the world that there's no way that those are available here. And if they are, it's cost prohibitive to and even if it wasn't cost prohibitive, there's also other things, you know, like environmental protection people, you know, or whatever, you know, that just will prohibit it. So, you know, we do need to get it somehow.
Yeah. And, you know, while Russia is obviously there is this relationship, I think Germany obviously supports the Ukraine in this whole thing. So it's weird. I feel like this whole relationship with other countries that are starting a war with different countries and that you want to put sanctions on, you still have to kind of maintain a business side of it. It's weird. I honestly don't know. Like I'm clearly not in that kind of business and I don't want to be because I feel like those are hard decisions to make. But lots of people are making them. So it's obviously in their hands. But yeah, anyways, we are moving on to our very fun fact of the day, which is very interesting. And I kind of liked it. It said companies that use dedicated logistics companies as their transportation consultants save an average of 13% on shipping costs every year. So I would say get yourself a transportation consultant. I feel like any company would have that. But also, when I was reading this, I was like, there should be a fun fact on this of people taking compliant courses because you might save a lot of money too at the end of the day, you know, as in not messing up like with sanctions or imports or exports or whatever, Incoterms, whatever you need. You can come take some training and save a lot of bucks later on, you know? But yeah, that was my marketing spiel of the day.
There you go.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that was it for today. That's all I have for you. I think those articles were pretty interesting and kind of to touch base on. Hopefully you got something out of it. And do you guys have anything else to add?
No. I'm good for the next week.
Yeah, hopefully Father's more Day happens. And it's almost going to be 4th of July too.
Coming right around the corner.
There's a lot going on right now. The Euros.
Yeah, starting today. Germany playing Scotland. Very exciting. We'll see. Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, we got to go. And I'm sure you have to go to work. And I do too, actually. So have a great day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.